Well, here we go. Welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. This show is just for woodshop owners like cabinet makers, architectural millworkers, and closet companies. Those of you who are interested in the business of the woodshop business. Now, there's a chance you and I haven't met yet, but here's what I already know about you. You're not here by accident, my friend. Something in you is looking for straightforward, no BS answers. Well, welcome home, because this show is all about getting to the next level by working smarter, not just harder, using business tools to attack bottlenecks and get you and your team, your shop, to the next level. The show's all about the business of the woodshop business. Now, today's guest is Marc Sanderson from Innergy. Those of you who already have a woodshop in the $4, $5, $6 million a year range have probably heard about Innergy software. And no, this is not an ad for Innergy. Marc Sanderson also owns Wilkie Sanderson, a very large cabinet shop. He is an extremely knowledgeable and wise guest, and I am very proud and happy to have him here. Now, if your business is already at 4 or 5 million bucks, you're going to pull a ton of value out of this episode. And if your business is under that level, you're going to pull a ton of value out of this episode as well, especially because you normally would not have the chance to access this kind of intel. Just flat out, hands down, you wouldn't. This is probably going to be one of the most popular episodes this year. Follow Marc and myself on LinkedIn. Marc's name is Marc Sanderson. His name is spelled with a C, Marc with a C, and then Sanderson as in Sanderson. And then my name, Dominic Rubino. Please connect with both of us on LinkedIn. You can also connect with me on a Facebook group, Contractor Strategy Group, and all we talk about there is the business of the contracting business. At any point in time, please reach out to me and just say, hey, Dom, let's talk. And my cell phone number, you just text me. It's pretty low key here. Just text me 315-903-7853. Today, we're going to be talking about how do I deal with scheduling problems in my millwork and cabinet shop. You know why this episode's important? Because I just said scheduling problems, and how many of us are free of scheduling problems in our millwork or cabinet shop? Look, if you constantly find yourself juggling production schedules against broken promises from builders, GCs, and other subtrades, this episode's for you. If you do commercial millwork and you're getting contracts given to you, pushed to you by builders and GCs, and those contracts leave you feeling like you're signing into a problem, well, this episode's for you. If you do residential work and you find that timelines are being stretched and then crunched and then expanded and then shifted and then blamed on you, this episode is for you. And if you're at all interested in shop efficiency and smooth operations, then this episode is for you. If you're trying to get buy-in from your foreman, your sub-assembly leads, your production manager, your purchaser, any of those people, then this episode's for you. And if none of those things appeal to you, then my friend, this podcast is not for you, because this show, like I said, is about the business of the woodshop business. And today is all about solutions for a growing woodshop business. I also want to give a special shout out to Nick from Rodina Cabinets. Hey, Nick. He and I have been working together for some time now, and I sent him this episode before it went live to anyone else. Actually, my team and I sent this to a couple dozen clients who've been able to listen to it almost, say, a month and a half before it went live. Why? Because membership has its privileges. All of the people we sent this to are working with us actively. Those guys opted into the inside track. And of course, we do everything on our side to give them every single unfair advantage we can, and we load them up. That's why. Now, Nick is at an inflection point in his shop where he knows the moving pieces. We're just trying to prioritize which ones come first. That'll make more sense when you hear Marc and I talking in this episode about the 4 leverage points that you can work when it comes to scheduling. Now, based on Nick's questions in one of our coaching meetings, I actually created a new professional development tool just for cabinetry based on this scheduling question. It's called the Scheduling Issue Solution Finder, but that's a pretty wordy name. So I've been calling it the Rodina scale because that's Nick's company name, Rodina Cabinets. If you want a copy of that one-page reference tool that you can share with your foreman, your production manager, your purchaser, yourself, your estimator, your designers, your installers, then shoot me a text at 315-903-7853. Just say Rodina scale. We can all have a good laugh. Yeah, honestly, just say Rodina scale and I'll know which one to send off to you. Look, that one-page visual, it's just one page, is just one example of simple systems. And those are the simple systems my coaches and I are here to show you to help you run this business smoother, make the money you deserve, and live the life you want. Those are the simple systems we talk about to help you run the business. Those simple systems give you the quiet confidence to take this company wherever you want to get to. Now, think about this when it comes to simple systems. How do simple systems feel? Here's how they actually feel. I want you to sit up straight in your chair, or if you're walking around, stand up a little bit straight. Put your shoulders back. Put your head forward, tilt your chin up just 1/4 of an inch, and then take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. That is what the quiet confidence of simple systems feels like. That's why you see some cabinet shops growing leaps and bounds year over year, because they're putting simple systems in place and they've gotten out of the stuck loop. Look, if I had to summarize everything for you, this podcast is about the mindset of growth and success for you as a business owner. That's exactly what Mark and I are going to talk about today. Now, speaking of mindset, I've got a couple of dad jokes for you. Now, you might ask, why dad jokes, Dom? And why bad jokes? And why dad jokes poorly delivered with poor timing? Well, because I still want to get you laughing, and I want to get your mind open to hear what Mark has to say today. And so because it's Marc Sanderson, and because he runs a software company and a millwork shop, I decided to go on the software side for our joke themes today. So you can say these to your tech guy, or maybe if you've got a brother-in-law that's a techie, these are some good jokes for you. Give a man a program and frustrate him for a day. Teach a man to program. Frustrate him for a lifetime. Hey, did you know that debugging software code is just like being the detective in a crime movie, except you're also the murderer? That one. Okay. So a software engineer, a hardware engineer, and a departmental manager are driving down a steep mountain road, and suddenly the brakes on their car fail. The car goes way out of control down the road, bouncing off the crash barriers, and finally grinds to a halt, scraping along the mountainside. The 3 guys inside are stuck halfway down the mountain in a car with no brakes. And what are they going to do? Well, I know, says the departmental manager. Let's have a meeting where we propose a vision, formulate a mission statement, define some goals, and by process of continuous improvement, find a solution to the critical problems, and we could be on our way. The hardware engineer pipes up and he says, no. That will take far too long. And that method has never worked before. In no time at all, I can strip down the car's braking system, isolate the fault, fix it, and then we can be on our way. Keep in mind, they are dangling on the side of a mountain. Then the software engineer pipes up and he says, wait, before we do anything, I think we should push the car back up the road and see if it happens again. I have a feeling you could change the trades on those almost any way you wanted to. CNC operator, estimator, all that stuff. A programmer. This is a heaven joke. Hey, folks, here we go. A programmer finds himself standing in front of a committee that decides whether he should go to heaven or hell. The committee tells the programmer he actually has a say in the matter. He's got to vote, and asks him if he wants to see either heaven or hell before stating his preference. Sure, says the programmer. I actually have a pretty good idea of what heaven's like, so let's have a look at hell. So the angel takes the programmer to a sunny beach full of beautiful women, listening to music, drinking, having a great time. Wow, he says. Hell looks great. I'll take hell. Instantly, the programmer finds himself in red hot lava with demons tearing at his flesh, screaming and wailing in the background. He says, where's the beach? Where's the music? He says that's to the angel. The angel says, sorry, that was the demo. Oh, Mark, I know you're listening to this part. You're going to feel like it was a shot at you. It wasn't. It's just a general software shot. Hey, let's end off with a couple of quick jokes. How many programmers does it take to change a light bulb? None. That's a hardware problem. This one's only a little bit spicy. Software programming is just like sex. One mistake, and you have to support it for the rest of your life. Yike. Hey, folks, listen, are you missing the end of the show? Are you like Clint Eastwood with that fast forward button? You are missing out, my friend. You're missing out on something big. You're actually missing out on more free education, because at the end of every show, I do a very specific training segment where I simplify and solve a common business problem. Make sure you stay to the end to catch that. Now, I host this podcast because one day I would be very proud to stand beside you as your business coach. As a matter of fact, I have a team of business coaches I have personally hand selected. I have extremely high expectations for the people that join my team, and I'm proud of every single one of them. You guys have met many of them already. They're going to be guests on the podcast here. We're going to be doing another round with them as guests. Some of you are already working with them, Coach Lee, Coach Ryan, Coach Jake, Coach Omzi. So you know what I mean. Each one of these coaches is also a contractor, a business person who has built or sold their own company before. It is hard to get on my team, and I'm very proud to say that. And the reason for that is because we take working with you very seriously. Hey, by the way, did you know that after the name change to Contractor Wealth Systems, we've rolled out 2 brand new coaching programs aimed at giving you more options for growth? The first new program is actually an extension. For those of you who have taken Construction Millionaire Bootcamp over the years, or maybe years ago you took 30-day construction business, or you took a course that we used to call How to Find and Fix Your 8 Profit Leaks. If you've taken any of those courses with us before, we now have a brand new program for you to continue coaching in a very, very affordable and easy to consume way. Get in touch with us if you're an alumni and you want to learn more. The second program is something called the Business Operations Audit. Now, it was specifically made to answer the question, I know I need to make a change, I'm just not sure what to do next. So if you're curious about growth, but you're not sure what the upside is, this program is for you. Again, get in touch. I'm happy to walk you through it. No matter what, you can always just shoot me a text at 315-903-7853 and just say, Dom, let's talk. And then you know what we'll do? We'll talk. All right. Listen, thank you very much for listening to the intro. Let's get to the Marc Sanderson episode. I cannot wait for you to hear this. Let's get to it. Mr. Marc Sanderson.
How are you?
I'm great, and I'm very thankful.
Well, I think I'm the one that is honored here because you brought me back on for a second time.
I know.
So I'm really excited that the first time actually worked out well.
Yeah.
And so thank you very much that we're chatting again. I know that we have a lot of fun behind the scenes, that we're going to have fun in the next 45 minutes. This is going to be great.
We're going to have fun and we learn.
Oh,
we learn.
All the time. Lifelong learning is exactly what we should be doing. That's how we get through this. In a very, very tough industry at times. So
now you're only after this episode, you're only even with Jonah Coleman because he's been on twice. So I'm just saying, it's not a competition, but somebody's going to win.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we'll see. We'll see who gets the higher scores. And by the way, if I don't, which I probably won't, Jonah works for me. And so I make sure that he won't be on again. And so it will at least tie. And that's a good thing in at least soccer. So
I know. That's the reason I said it, because I know he works for you. And I'm like, the next time he comes on, you'll be like, not approved.
Yeah, not approved.
Anyways, it is good to have you back here. You are you're a wise elder, and I mean that in a respectful way, in the cabinetry, the millwork, the finished wood trades. And so I really want to pick your brain about one of 2 major problems that we have in the industry. I'll get to that in a second, but let me do this because some people might not know you.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I really, I'm not sure that I'm wise, but I will say that I have earned the gray hair of having experience in this industry and learning from my mistakes. And as you said earlier, that lifelong learning, I promise you, given my East Coast education, that was not the most expensive education I've ever had in my life. It is some of the stuff that I've had to deal with within this industry. But you know what? Run to those problems, solve them, dig under, crash through the wall, whatever the case may be. And so I'm hoping that I can share some of that experience so that gray hairs end up being less for others.
Right. Let's do it. So actually, I'll start with this question, and I ask everybody the same very abrupt question. Sure. You ready for this?
I am. Late on me.
Marc Sanderson, who the heck are you? And how is it that you come to be speaking to all these finished wood trades business owners all around the world?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would do the silly joke first because I usually do it without my shoes on and I have my.
I know you always leave your shoes in the hall in the runway and the trade shows.
I do. I do. And so that's probably the silly answer, but I'll give you a more direct answer, especially for those in your audience that may not be familiar with my CV or my resume, and why they should listen. At least listen to an old guy with gray hair and maybe glean from something from it. So, been in the industry for, well, now what, 26 years, since 1997. So we ended up doing a search out of grad school looking for a company to buy, and it happened to be Ron's Cabinets in Minnesota. We bought Ron's
Wow.
Cabinets in Minnesota, which is now Wilkie Sanderson. It's a $20 million organization. We're doing high-end architectural millwork.
Yeah.
We don't have aspirations to be 40. As I tell my team, I just like doing the most profitable $20 million a year that we can find within the whole industry. And we end up serving the market coast to coast in terms of architecture, millwork, and woodwork.
Sure. Yeah.
70 to 80% of our work is outside the state of Minnesota. So that's kind of avenue number one from which I come and the gray hair develops. And I
Yeah.
know that we're going to talk about some problems in our industry. And I promise you, since 1997, we've been trying to solve them. So maybe some of
Uh,
that experience can glean. The second thing that brings me to bear here is related to the first. We ended up writing software at Wilkie. As part of that millwork company, I couldn't find a package that met our needs. And so
right.
we started writing our own code. That has involved into my second business, which services the woodworking industry on the software side.
Right.
So I have gray hair from two avenues, being a vendor to the industry and being in the industry itself. So,
Yeah. That's a very unique position though, because look, a lot of guys just cobble together Excel.
oh, yeah. 80 to
And
90% of our industry is just that. And I would argue it doesn't give you one source of truth. There are
one
many ways to
source of
skin the
truth.
cat, but having that data, and this is one of my fundamentals, and my staff ends up, both my Wilkie staff and my software staff
Yeah.
end up naming or numbering the Markisms. And one of them is profit is made in the office. It's engaged or realized in the shop. And so we
Wow.
establish a profit in the ones and zeros realm of what we do, and
Hmm.
all the upfront work that we do, or sometimes which we don't do. And it's once it hits the shop floor, that's where the profit's realized. But it's clearly established before the sawdust starts flying. And that is one of those mindsets in my 26 years of being in this industry that
Right.
has just been reinforced over and over and over again.
I
Uh,
love that. I always say the money's not in the sawdust anymore.
yeah, it's not.
And there's people listening who are, smaller shops and maybe they want to stay a smaller shop and there's nothing wrong
Yes.
with that. But at some point the sawdust is the money. But at
Yeah.
some point it is not the money anymore. It's
Yeah.
working from the neck up. It's the
Yeah.
thinking, implementing, building a team that builds the products.
Yeah, there's an experiment that I end up doing, and this could be a real quick mind experiment, at least for
Yeah.
your audience. And I just asked people, I said, so where do you spend most of your time solving your problems? And in general, entrepreneurs tell me, well, it's on the shop floor. 70% of my staff is there, 60 to 80% of my CapEx is there, my equipment's there. I'm like, okay, that's where you're solving the problems. That's where you're fighting the fires. And then I switch it up on them and I say, okay, if you could have your way and not have the fire rage, if you could put it out when it's an ember, where would you have to move in order to put it out? And they're like, oh, back in the office. It'd be in estimating and
So
sales in my engineering and project management. And like, okay, now you have the secret. Now you know one of the levers to our industry is you have to move the firefighting to fire prevention. Stop running to where the ember, where the flame and the smoke is.
mhm.
Move upstream, work on your business, and put it out where the embers start. And that's the classic example. And when I step people through that mind experiment, and we even do it with post-it notes, and we get specific with problems, you see the shift of problems move to the front end in a group environment. It's the light bulb above the head goes on, which I love,
Yeah.
absolutely love.
It's
So
so first of all, that was
yeah.
fantastic. We could probably stop the interview here because that level of realization, a bunch of people right now are smacking the steering wheel yelling, he's right. It's in the office. but the other thing earlier I mentioned there's two major problems that we see. I mean, there's problems that are specific to business
Yes.
structure, business operations, marketing, and all those things, profitability. But there's two. If I had to put some issues that come up across the whole industry and equalizing for all things, one of them is this problems with scheduling and cabinetry, which is what you and I are going to talk about today. But the other
Yes.
one is also an office problem. And it is, how do I train somebody from zero to be an effective cabinetry engineer or draftsman, whatever you call it, technical draft? Everybody's
Yeah.
got slightly different titles, but I think we all know what that means. Before it goes to the CNC, before it goes to the saw,
Yes.
who
Yes.
who puts the IP into it? And that's another problem, but it's interesting before it goes to the floor.
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
pre-sawdust. So both of these problems that I would argue, and you're right on, Dominic, that they're chronic. These aren't these problems are not, they're structural. They are part of this industry that we find ourselves in. And it's when I say it's structural, it is because of what our customers do to us in terms of their delivery schedule and how that's changing. It's how we have to sell. And it's that erratic end schedule and that lumpy input that we all find ourselves in, and then
Yeah.
trying to balance that to flatline our production in a custom environment where the bottlenecks are constantly changing. That in a nutshell ends up being our industry by definition, whether it's architectural woodworking or high-end residential or local cabinet shops, it doesn't matter. We all have that exact same issue.
Yeah, that's scheduling. Well, let's dive into it. So if we
Okay,
all have
perfect.
that scheduling issue, bringing
Yes,
your and you're kind of like me. Obviously, you come at it from a different place. You see lots of shops and you see lots of
yes, sir.
situations. So that
Yeah,
allows us to take in a lot of information and try to simplify it so we can solve it. So
yes,
what are the ways that
yeah.
other shops are solving the what did you call it? Lumpy scheduling?
Yeah, so we got the lumpy scheduling. So we got this lumpy, erratic sales process coming in,
Hmm.
erratic delivery on the backside. It is just trying to manage between those bookends. You can pull your hair out. And for those that can't see me right now, my hair's a little on the longer side. And it seems like you've pulled yours out. And
I've
that's a
pulled
lot.
some of my yeah, some of mine just came out on its own. It knew what was coming, and for its own good, it just marched away.
Yep. You knew I was setting you up for that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh man. So it is the scheduling. We're getting squeezed in the vice grip between what's required on the back end and how we end up getting the product projects. And that's another key to it. It's project-based selling. We're not selling widgets. We're not having this make to inventory where we can put it at Home Depot or someplace else. It is project driven. And so it is very specific, it is very custom. And that lumpy on the front end, erratic on the back end, squeezes us to try and figure out how to manage that workflow in a way that we make money. That's that vice grip.
Right. So how do we go about fixing it? Where are the places we can
Yeah.
lever or apply
Yeah.
pressure?
So, great question. And I'm going to use an analogy with you so that we can talk about fingers poking at a balloon. And you're like, "What, Mark? That's kind of crazy." And so let me describe to you the way that I think about problems.
Hmm.
Um, and most of the people, and I imagine that you experience this too, sir, are wanting the silver bullet. There are no silver bullets, especially in the complex industry we have.
Yeah.
It requires what I refer to as 1 + 1 has to equal 3. You can do two events, but it's the plus sign that gets them to be integrative, or they integrate together. They reinforce each other to get to that plus, to get to that 3. And so the analogy that I end up using is a balloon. So how do you
Hmm.
pop a balloon? And I'll get to your answer here with some very specific tactics. So, but I think the analogy helps us as we go through what we're going to talk through next.
Okay.
If you used one finger or that silver bullet, you're not going to pop the balloon. You're just going to push the problem around. And you're going to spend a lot of energy and you're not going to solve a single thing. Two fingers to pop the balloon, you may contain the problem, but you're still not going to pop the balloon. And it requires multiple independent fingers at these major chronic systemic problems that we
Hmm.
have within our industry. That's the only way that we solve them. And it has to be independent activities. And so as I think about your question, I'm thinking about the balloon of the scheduling problem that we all have.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, what are the fingers that we're poking at this? Well, one, we got to start in the front. And that is, we have to make sure that we're setting up our contract with our customer in the right way. There's a ton of things in that category, like communication, getting the right terms. And I think you and I will probably go through that. So that's one finger poking at the balloon. But if that's the only thing we do, we don't have the systems in place to take that information and manage it downstream.
Or
So
make
we
the
need
most of it. Make the most of the contract changes and I don't want to say enforce them, but make them come to life.
it is. It's
Yeah.
enforcing and making them real in terms of our communication from a project management standpoint,
Right.
from, because things happen in a custom fabrication environment. Things happen in construction. So how do we make sure that we're set up well for success with our clients? And there have been so many, and now I'm kind of deep diving in the single finger for a moment, but let me go back.
Yeah.
We have the contract. We have to be looking at the contract in the front end, what that relationship looks like. And whether it's a PO or a contract, I'm just going to use contract in air quotes. It's how we set up the relationship with our customer and we communicate the expectations. Even to the extent that Wilkie, we start talking now about the fact that they're not buying product, they're buying time in our schedule. Very different
Oh,
conversation.
hold everything.
Yeah, we're going to
So
get to that.
I'm doing a millwork package for my, oh, let's be very modern right now. I have a cannabis chain, let's just say, because who doesn't?
Yes, exactly.
Right. By the way, as many people as have podcasts, let's be real.
Yeah.
But let's just say I bring a cabinetry, a millwork package to you,
Yeah.
and I have a chain of retail stores. You're changing the conversation to say we're not buying, we're not selling you product, we're selling you time in our production facility,
Yes.
in our
Yeah.
customer.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that change
Yeah.
in mindset, see, that's that mindset thing. And earlier in your intro, I don't know if you heard yourself say it, but
Oh,
you said, look, go find the problem, run towards it, and it said
yeah.
crash through it or something.
Yes.
I'm in complete agreement on that.
Yeah.
Find the problem and deal with it up front, or when there's a problem that we can't deal with, change the playing field, which is what
Yeah.
you did there.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Okay.
Which gets into the whole blue ocean strategy, which I know is not the topic of today, but you and I can have a whole conversation, and maybe
Yeah.
that's one up on Jonah, so that
Yeah.
I come back and we talk about the stop. All of us stop playing in the red oceans where it's bloody, and how do we move to a blue ocean and survive? So that's another topic, another day. Also, I'd argue a chronic problem. But let's go back to the balloon analogy for a
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So finger number one, I think, is upfront in that communication contract. Finger number two is providing to your organization a way to think through flexibility. And it's a lean concept, one piece flow. Now, some of your folks listening are going to go, wait a minute, I'm doing one cabinet side at a time. No, no, no. I'm doing one box at a time. No. But there are many times that I've seen organizations put a whole project through that clogs up the snake. And so having discipline in your fabrication philosophy, your thought process to limit what you put to the shop floor in one piece at a time, how those work orders are released gives you some really strong flexibility with scheduling.
Okay.
But if you have a 50 or 100 or a $250,000 work order that you're trying to put through your shop, and you're missing some information, it gets clogged up very quickly and the scheduling gets screwed up. So that's finger number two.
So one piece flow doesn't have to be one box at a time. It could be an
Oh,
elevation or a room at a time, or
yeah.
maybe a color or a wood style. Like you're breaking it up into some logical chunk that you
Yes.
can flow through the system like a small job. Break a
Yeah.
big job into tiny jobs.
And Dominic, when we get to talking about this in more detail and we peel the onion further on one piece flow, it depends on where your perspective is in the organization. So what you just did was the perspective of the shop floor. So should I be putting work orders on the shop floor that are cabinet based and going through my cabinet line? Should I be putting work orders in one piece flow through my custom assembly or my solid surface department? Well, you know what? PMs don't think that way. The office staff doesn't think that way. They think in terms of schedule, not in terms of, and so one piece flow is a varying concept depending on where your seat is on the bus. And so you have to be cognizant of that and be flexible enough as the evolution of your work goes through your shop to understand where the inflection points are in this concept. So you're spot on, absolutely spot on, my friend.
I feel like we're channeling the spirit of Paul Akers and Brad Cairns right now.
Well, good.
If they can hear this, they're high-fiving each other somewhere. All right.
Well,
So
so now we got two fingers popping at the balloon, and we've
yeah.
contained the problem, maybe.
Yeah.
So we need some more. Um, Another one that I would say is a finger is trying to understand, because we're custom fabricators and our sales process is lumpy. It's not consistent. We're not getting that $5,000 job every day that we need. We're not
Mm.
getting that $50,000 job when we do our averages. We're getting 200,000 and we get nothing for a month. Then we get 10 and a 15 and a 20 and so on. It is absolutely lumpy. And because of that lumpiness, one, and because of the custom nature of what we do, we have these shifting bottlenecks in our schedule.
Okay.
And so it's like, oh, you know what? A whole bunch of trim goes through my shop really easy. But that custom reception desk and that paneling portion, oh my gosh. And so that requires a lot more labor than running something through my molder and then putting it in the finish room. And so this varying mix of these
Mm.
projects that we get impact where it gets stuck in our workflow, which most people, when they think about bottlenecks, they think about the equipment on the shop floor. And I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. The bottlenecks are easy to see on the shop floor. You just go out there and you see where the inventory builds up. It's like, you know what? I got a ton of inventory sitting in front of my bander.
Yeah.
Yep, there's a bottleneck. I need to do something different here. That's easy to address. The bottlenecks in the office when it's stuck in engineering, or it's stuck worse in the customer for approval. Those are the bottlenecks that end up controlling our life that rarely or very few
Yeah.
times I've seen organizations run to and address.
Yeah.
So that's got
Selections,
to be,
just getting selections from customers, getting
yes.
all of those things. And those eat time,
Oh my
and they
gosh.
dig into our calendar, and they dig into your heart as the owner.
They do. And just let's go to that color issue and getting the choices. You get 80% of them pretty quick. It's the last 20 that are hard. And then how many times do you have to meet with that client if you're a residential cabineter and still getting those last 20 decisions? But it holds up the whole project, or depending on how you break this up, it could hold up everything. And so getting that information, you can't have a perfect release on the shop floor without all the field measures done, all the materials sitting in your shop, and all the information correct. Those three things have to be there. And if we recognize that and work backwards with our bottlenecks, it's now we start to kind of peel the onion and see what tactical things we actually need to do to address those three elements. But finger number three, we have to be cognizant and address the bottlenecks that naturally happen because of this erratic or lumpy input that we get from our clients.
I think this goes back to why you need good data. What did you call it? A
Single source of truth, one source
single
of
source
truth.
of truth. Yeah.
Yeah. So many times I've been in, we're a $20 million organization, and I know that not all your listeners are that size. But I can remember having conversations in the beginning, back in the early 2000s, when we bought Ron's Cabinets, that people would come to the table with opinions or
Right.
with different set of datas, and we would spend most of the time arguing about whose data was right. And I'm like, this is terrible. We got to get to a single source. And then we stop arguing about the data and let's start solving problems.
Mm.
Very different outcome. Very different
Very
outcome
different.
when we take that approach.
I find that when I deal with people on a growth trajectory. They're
Yes,
here,
sir.
they're at A and they want to get to B. So
Yes,
there's the
sir.
next level, right?
Yeah.
And the general challenge is I want to get to the next level, but I can't see over the hill.
Yeah.
And usually what's missing is data,
Yes.
right? And sometimes they've got the data, but they don't have the administrators or the people or other systems to help them get the data or have time to look at it. But what they need is the info. Because once they have
Yeah.
the info, they can make a logical decision and
Yes.
kind of like your thing, remove the emotion.
Yeah, and Dominic, this is absolutely a great subplot or sub point, sub finger, if you want, to this whole bottleneck management. Organizations that are trying, as you said, on that growth trajectory and trying to get to point B, usually have a very strong entrepreneur that can wrap their arms around the whole company.
Mm.
They know what's going on everywhere, and they're the system, they're the ERP. Their brain is the collector and the aggregator of the data. They might be the single source of truth, candidly, and their gut. But as they get to that inflection point, that
Mm.
ceiling, they can't. I always do the graphical example of I put my arms like a hug. And the entrepreneur, they can touch their fingers, but as they get larger, they can't touch everything. And that hug opens up. And that's a lack of control. And what they need to get to is systems and process, I would argue. That's what we ended up doing.
I couldn't
Yeah,
agree
go for
more.
it. Yeah, say it,
No, no,
Dominic,
no.
'cause
So
you and
here's
I
here's
are,
here's the problem. I've had this problem twice in two separate companies. And it's a
yes, sir.
weird little number. I can remember everybody's name up to 200 employees.
Yes.
Now, like at around 100, I still remember their husbands or their wives, the dog. I
Yeah.
remember they have kids or they don't. I don't know their kids' names, right? But once it gets to about 200 employees, I
Yeah.
I can't. It's an interesting. You said the fingers start to separate, and I end
Yeah.
up referring to everybody like, "Hey, coach, how's it going
Yeah.
today?"
Exactly.
Because I forget their name and I don't want to get it wrong. So, but those
Yeah.
are indicators to me. First of all, I laugh at myself. I'm like, "Oh, I did it
Yes.
again. Good for
Yeah.
you." But
Yep.
also, we have a system here that potentially broken if I don't know what's going on with my team. And you've got other examples of that. But
Yep.
for me, it's
Yeah.
that 200 number. I can remember 200 names in my own
Yeah.
company. 201, I don't know.
And I think that number, if we did a different unit of measure, Dominic, and it's not people at the 200, but think about it as work orders or
Mm,
projects within your organization. You get to a certain size of what the project count is on your shop floor, or the work order count that's on your shop floor. I bet if you graphed your satisfaction and your anxiety level against that number, you'd see a very strong correlation without getting to the point of one source of truth, having some data that you can
mm,
filter out the following. These are the things that are going fine. I don't need to worry about it because our process and our workflow is dealing with those issues in a normal way. But
mm.
here's the 10 to 15% that are exceptions. That's what I need to spend my managerial time on. What I refer to as ROMA, return on Mark's attention. I want to look for that 10 to 15% that I run to and solve. But if I'm that entrepreneur, I'm wrapping my arm around all of it.
Yeah,
And that is an inflection point for most entrepreneurs, very candidly.
yeah. What I find in that same thing is that communication. Like we introduce a
Oh,
communication model, right? And I
yes,
think you know this. We use EOS model to
yes,
apply a strategic plan, and then we just march through the strategic plan in a very formulaic fashion. And
yes,
but it's having that communication so that, well, you use the analogy of hands, so I'll say the left hand knows what the right hand's doing,
yes.
because otherwise
Yeah.
you're limiting your growth, right? It can't all be in my head anymore.
No, it can't. And there's tons of rules that we all as entrepreneurs have. That's why this gray hair on my face that nobody can see at the moment. But
Oh no, this is a YouTube video as well. You'll be in
oh,
full
well, there we
glory for
go.
years.
Everyone
You'll
can
be
see my
frozen.
gray hair.
You'll be frozen in time for at least 10 years or whenever my channel gets taken down.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I would have dressed better for you, Dominic. I
Okay.
thought it was just
Oh,
audio.
sorry. No, you're all good. You're here
No,
for your
we're
wisdom, not your looks, buddy. That's what I
thank you.
Do you ever
Yeah, I
do that
got
in the morning? You're getting ready in the morning and you're looking at yourself and you're like, today I'm going to have to rely on my wits. It's just
yes.
not coming together.
Or as I've had people say, "Wow, you have a voice for radio, but not and a face for one too."
And a
So
face for one too. Yeah. Yeah. So
so
we've
anyway,
got number three, which
yeah.
is
Number three.
shifting bottlenecks.
Yeah. So let me go to like finger number four, and I'm not sure that we're going to have time to go through everything, but let me at least give you these four, and we can go back if you wish and peel the onion further. Um, Pre-build and store.
Hmm.
That's the terminology that I use. That would be the tagline for that fourth finger poking at it. Let me kind of describe what that means. Um, um, uh, you need to have all the right information. You need to have all the materials, and you have to give your shop the time on the shop floor. That's the perfect release. Time, got to give the shop time. You have to make sure that all the materials are there and all the information is correct. Well,
Yeah.
one of the inputs to correct information is these other trades. And it could be your customer also not giving you the information that you need. And so the question becomes, how do you take that and spin it and move it so that you can do things without having those as final inputs to your process? And let me give you a hard
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. Give me an example on that one. This is cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm in the commercial space, and this is a little bit different for residential, but let me just use my commercial example for the moment. As we look at projects, large, and we try and target $1 million projects at our firm. Um, as we look at those jobs, we are looking at the quality or the demographics of the project to say how much of this job could be pre-built
Mm.
without field measures. Can we do hold twos and put that as part of our contract? Do you see what I
Oh,
just did there? I
yeah.
took
You
the
change the playing
contract.
field again.
Yes, we're changing the playing field. But I just did a 1 + 1 = 3 for you. So the first finger we talked about was contract. The fourth finger we just talked about was pre-build and store. I just put the two together with a plus sign. So
Yeah.
1 + 1 now equals 3 because I'm taking pre-build and store and allowing my shop to have flexibility and my project managers to move things around and store it at the end prior to delivery in order to level out my shop and keep everybody busy because of the vagaries. No, yeah. Oh, you got your hand up
I
then.
got
Go
my
for it.
hand up because I feel like there's a question. Give me a
Yeah.
question. Give me an example, because
Yeah. Yeah.
some guys listening are resi and they're not commercial.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm thinking about a settee or a circular couch, like something that's a
Yeah.
standalone that doesn't
Yeah.
require drywall finishing measurements.
Yeah.
What's an
Exactly.
example of a classic pre-build and store scenario?
Yeah, so classic example, so a cabinet run that has it's a wall run, but it's a finished end on the other. Whether that's commercial or
Oh, right,
residential,
right,
you know what? We just need to make sure that the plumber puts the pipes in the right spot and Sparky puts the outlet in the right spot. That's all we need to make sure. And so if we can do our shop drawings in a method, in a fashion that we mark those well, now we can have our customer, the general contractor, the client, whatever the case is, use that information to help Sparky and the plumber do what they need to do right. Now
right.
we can fabricate that cabinet run. So that's an example. Let me use another standalone piece of furniture on the high-end residential elm. So if someone has this custom settee or this couch or a gorgeous piece of office furniture, you know what? Not really needing a lot of field measures on that one. There's a way that you can use that, get that through your process in terms of approvals, get it ready in electronic inventory even though you don't need to deliver for 3 or 4 or 5 months because they're not moving in yet, but you use that as fodder or
Right,
feed into your system to build it and then just store it.
right.
And that thinking about your projects up front to eliminate those inputs and give yourself an electronic inventory for your shop to do work when they need it,
Mm,
coupled with having your work orders in a small enough size that you can pull from them without having these semi-loads of material. Putting all of that together starts to be 1 + 1 + 1, and all the fingers start to pop at this balloon
I
that you're
see.
starting to solve this scheduling nightmare that we
Yeah.
have within the industry.
Let me go back and ask, and I think some people are
Yeah.
asking this right now.
Yeah,
Who
please.
is the person in
Yeah.
my company that thinks the big thinks with me on
Yeah.
matching up contract versus pre-build and store?
Yeah.
What's the role of that person? Because as we know, the people listening are already busy,
Yeah.
and so they're like, well, who's going to do that for
Yeah, so I'm gonna first address the busy issue, and then I'm gonna answer your question. So you may have to remind me on your question, but there's a concept that we have to talk through because I get this complaint all the time. Mark, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, and I refer to this conceptually as the double hump.
me?
And so I typically have somebody graph out where in the workflow of the life cycle of their project they're spending most of their time.
Okay.
And when they graph this out, whether it's the entrepreneur, the project manager, etc., the max or the peak of their time investment is usually when the work orders are on the shop floor. The upfront is slow, and then they graph up and they get this peak at the end, quote unquote, the end of the job. And like, okay, that's fine, I get that. If we wanted to eliminate that hump and be proactive, where do you need to spend your time? And they're like, oh, well, in the beginning. I'm like, perfect. Now, if you've got your new project and you spend it in the beginning, and you have your old project and you're spending it at the end, guess what just happened to your life? You have this double hump that layers on top of each other. And this was
Mm,
an active conversation I had to have, 15 plus years ago with my organization. I'm like, you know what? We're about to go through pain. We're about to go through agony because of this double hump. But I
mm.
promise you, when we get to the other side, you're going to have Friday afternoons off, and we're going to work 4 days on the shop floor, and you're not going to have mandatory Saturdays anymore, which we don't. I can't tell you, it's been over 5 years since we've had a mandatory Saturday.
Sorry.
Uh,
So tell me the net impact of these changes on Wilkie Center, and so maybe give us a picture of Wilkie that everybody
yeah,
understands: square feet, employees, and then
yeah.
days
So
worked. And
yep. So 20 million revenue plus minus. I think this year it's going to be a little on the plus side. Strong book of business. 72,000 square feet. We have a metal shop. We have our own place that we're doing all the pre-build and store. So when we finish our projects, we have a tier area of a deck of 3, and it's throughout. We are using the height of our building to store our product. It's all
Nice.
barcoded, all labeled, all palletized. We're getting paid for it. So that'll give you an image of the back end of our shop, but we're doing all our own finish work. We are probably at about 80 employees
Okay.
doing that work. We do our own installation from a superintendent standpoint,
Hmm.
but our installers are always local because we're moving around city to city within the country. There are a
Sure.
couple key cities that we end up contacting, and most of our work is probably with, I'd say 80% of our work is with less than 15 clients.
Okay.
So it's a very tight client base that we filter through and rinse and repeat year after year after year.
Yeah.
That help a little bit, Dominic?
That does. And then, but you mentioned 4-day work weeks and no
Yeah.
Saturday, no
So
forced Saturday. I don't want to say forced Saturdays.
yeah. So our
Highly encouraged Saturdays.
oh yeah, we don't do that. And so we do 410s, and if we
Mm.
have to flex an overtime, it's Friday. And here's one of the things that ended up working out really well for
Wow.
us
That is
with
so
all of
cool.
these pieces. Guess what we found that happened on a team-based, because on the shop floor, it's team-based decision making. And we could probably spend another whole conversation on that one. But you get to a Wednesday or a Tuesday afternoon, and the guys on the shop floor see our schedule, and they know what needs to stage. We call it staging. What needs to hit the dock. It may not deliver, but we track all our dates on stage dates, not delivery dates, because of this pre-build and store concept. We're not
So
rushing to the
you moved the calendar back into your internal
yes,
operations. Do you know who
yes,
used to do this? Dell. Dell Computers.
yes,
Do you remember
yeah.
this story about
I
Dell?
do.
So
I
let me
do.
tell it and then you can fix it because I probably get it
No, no,
wrong.
no. You're
So Dell set their manufacturing up, Dell Computers in the early days of making PCs and laptops. They set it up so all of their vendors had this storage space at the front of the Dell manufacturing warehouse. And
yeah.
Dell wouldn't officially buy it until it crossed that little yellow line, right? So when they
Yep.
ordered it,
Consignment.
it was already on site. And so they changed the dynamics of the industry so that they didn't have to get a circuit board and wait 3 weeks for it. It was already on site. Only when
Yep.
they took possession and crossed the yellow line did they pay for it, and then they'd ship it off to you and get paid. Is that
Yeah.
what you've just done? Did you just Dell the
Well, yeah, I will say that we've done that on the front end, absolutely, and then we do
love
it on
it?
the back end. And so, yeah, so let me talk about the front end and the consignment piece. And what you just described is exactly what we do with our standard materials. When we break the band on the bunk, we own it. We don't have the yellow line. It is literally
It's
consigned vendor managed inventory at our organization. They're coming
mm,
in, and if the that material is there and still banded, that's theirs. As soon as we break the band, they know when we break the band, and we're running through that stack pretty quick at 20 million. And so on
yeah,
a $20 million organization, I'll give another stat. We probably have $200,000 worth of raw material on the plant floor. That is not normal, by the way. That is very, very low. So
that is
which gives,
low. Yeah.
yeah, great networking capital position that Wilkie finds themselves in. So I'm blessed with that.
So just so you know, Jonah Coleman is currently losing on the repeat invitation list. I've got three for you, just so everybody knows. We've got
Well,
just keeping a running total. We've got the potential for you to come back if you're a good boy. Blue
yeah,
Ocean versus Red Ocean. How to move to 4x10s with Flex on Friday and vendor
yes,
managed inventory.
yes.
Just so
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And so I didn't finish the story on the 4x10s. Here's what happens at the team level. They
Hmm.
look at the schedule on Tuesday and Wednesday. They're like, hey, we're going to spend a little bit of extra time this week. They're kind of hustling to get their 3-day weekend, and which I absolutely love. And the satisfaction level is high. And now I'm going to tell you one more thing that we end up doing that's crazy. We also have a 5-day schedule within our organization. What we found during the COVID period time and
Hmm.
when employees were hard, there was a subset, a segment that of people that like, I want to be done at 2 o'clock. Well, we don't offer that, and they left. And there were these some great craftsmen that we wanted. And when we finally stopped and listened, what we heard
Hmm.
them say is, "I have an afternoon job. I'm moving snow. I'm mowing lawns.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay." And so they're willing to flex on their hours into the wee hours of the morning. And so we're like, we have a crew of about 8 that are on this 5-day schedule.
Huh.
And they flex to the early hours of the morning, but they're done at 2 o'clock. And they love it. And so we've just had to do so a little extra effort in HR and in terms of managing labor on the shop floor. But to get an extra 8 people that are highly skilled craftsmen, what wouldn't you do, right? So
Yeah. I mean, the
there's some
cost for
topic.
hiring and the cost for retention. That's
Oh
really
gosh.
interesting. And people do have side gigs or
Yeah.
like, and some
Yeah.
people just want to work every day. They just
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So that's fine too. But the
I have a group
flexibility,
that like to
and that's
fish.
by what's that? Sorry.
I have a group that likes to fish on the weekend, and they get frustrated when they don't get their 3 day weekends.
I can't
So
imagine why they'd like to do that. By the way, all of this very insightful impact and output all came from this pre-build and store mentality.
yeah.
And I can hear people going, but you don't understand where I live. That real estate's so expensive, or I'm rural, there's nothing. But I want to encourage people when you say those kinds of things to Mark and I'm going to include you on this. That's
Yeah.
fine. This is you and I are exactly who they should be talking to about that. But we're
Yeah.
going to approach it the same way. We're going to change the playing field. We're going to find a way to go over it, under it, through it, whatever it takes. We'll solve that problem.
Yeah. So towards that economics, because I do get pushback on this concept. I'm like, there's some cons to it. Real estate's expensive, storage is expensive, those types of things are expensive. I get that. And I will say the way that we started at Wilkie is I found a warehouse that was willing to rent to me variable space. If I used it, I paid for it. If I didn't, I didn't.
I like
And
this variable
so,
use thing. You're doing it with
yeah.
your, yeah,
Yeah, it gets back to let's figure out what the problem is and kind of run around the wall. Let's avoid having to build on and have all this CapEx. Let's use somebody else's CapEx and give them some variable revenue. And that's what we did. Now, mind you, we moved into a new building, 72,000 square feet that had the height, and we're
yeah.
doing that all within our facility now. We're storing it. But we've also gotten creative with storing product. We had this courthouse in Indianapolis. We stored local there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell an economic story, and I'll try and do this quick. As I've moved from the woodworking business and more into the software side, I've spent less time.
Mm-hmm.
One person in my Wilkie organization said, look at this expense that we have on storage. And so they started as a management team talking about getting rid of the expense, which meant getting rid of pre-build and store. So we went through, I'm a Harvard grad, so I'm an analytical geek. So we did a numerical analysis. We had our data. I said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's look at what we did when we pre-built, and let's take all our work orders because we track the delivery date.
Yeah.
Let's look at if we just would have delivered on time. And net, I'm not going to get into, and I'm happy to do it some other time. I'd be happy to talk through the economics. I got a full hour long PowerPoint on it. But net, it was $1 million bottom line difference between with pre-built in store and without. And
So
so at the end of
which
the
was the
day,
benefit? Which turned
oh,
out to be
pre-built in
better?
store because I kept my shop fully busy, running on
Mm.
that strong 8 hours a day, 8 to 9 hours a day, that 10 hours on the floor. We were constantly busy. And it's the cycle of busy, not busy, busy, not busy. Oh my gosh, we're over busy because schedule moved. And then I'm paying overtime. It's managing and leveling out those humps.
Yeah.
That's the key. And without pre-built and store to take the hump and move it into the valley, it's almost impossible in this industry. And then you end up at 3%, which is average. No, no, don't do that. I already told
3%
you
what? Hold
$1 million.
on. You just said a number.
Yeah,
3% what?
3% profitability is industry average.
No es bueno. I would not be happy as your business coach with
No,
3%.
no, it's not good.
No.
Industry average.
Um,
So
so here's what I thought you were going to say. I thought, and maybe this was one of your,
yeah,
using the scientific method, you have to have the theory and then disprove it. I
yeah,
thought you were going to go back to say we went back to the contracts and started to like, do you have a clause that says, hey, Acme
yes, we do.
Builders, if
Yeah,
you accept, you said the delivery is going to be May 2nd. Oh,
yes.
you're the guest. You go.
No. You're right there. I'm going to Dominic, keep going because if you're doing it, then the learning's happening. So keep
There you
going,
go. So I'll
Dominic.
just do it really briefly though. So in my head, I thought what you were going to say is we go to the builders and we say, look, you said you want delivery on May the 2nd. So we're ready on May the 2nd.
Yeah,
If and I'll give you a little bit of flexibility because stuff happens. If you
yeah,
don't receive it by May the 10th, that's fine.
yeah.
You can provide us storage space. If you're not
Yes,
able to provide us heated, safe, secure, moisture controlled storage space, then
yes,
we're happy to provide that at the following rate.
yes.
Is that pretty
Absolutely.
close?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
All
we
right.
started giving it away for free because I understood the economics. And so my clients, and you heard me say, we got about the 15 of the same, we're now having to try and untrain them to this economic equation that you just did.
Ah,
But
okay.
I'm trying to train the industry to move, to not make the mistake I made, and move directly to the clause on the front end. And what you just did, Dom, and this, Dominic, I love this. You just took, remember we talked about the contract in the front end is one finger. And we
Right.
just talked about pre-build and store. And that concept of pre-build and store, you just moved all the way to the front end and made it part of the conversation with the customer so that those expectations, contractually or otherwise,
Mm,
were very clear about how Wilkie Sanderson or your listeners are running their firm. We took this thing that's huge for us, pulled it up front, establish it with our clients, even to the extent when we do an estimate, we go through our projects, and I can tell my clients when we give our bid, and in fact we do, 46% of this job is pre-build and store. 38% is pre-build and store because our estimators are tagging every single elevation as pre-build and store or not. And
wow.
we track our work orders all the way through as pre-build and store or not, which allows us to filter, pull them forward when we have a hole in our workload.
Right. And what's the reaction, if there is there a consistent reaction you hear from the PM on the other side, the purchaser, the GC?
No, when we so that there isn't a bad reaction. Now it requires some training. Usually the reaction is, well, wait a minute, this means that I have to do the field measures. No, we're still going to do them. And that's so here's my pitch. The number one reaction is I'm not going to do field measures for you, or I'm not going to manage the whole twos, or what it's a general
Right.
conversation around that information. It's like, well, wait a minute, we're still going to field measure. It's
Hmm.
just not going to be an input to the fabrication. It's going to be a quality control step. So let me describe this. We're going to show you what the field measurement needs to be, plus or minus with some tolerances on the shop drawings. You're going to give that to your drywaller, your framer, or whomever. Um, and that you just need to manage that. And they'll see the tolerance piece. They're
Hmm.
going to build, great. We're going to build two simultaneously so that we're on time every time for the schedule. And then we're going to come out and we're going to make sure that they did it right. And if they
Okay.
didn't, we're going to let you know. And then you have some options at that point in time.
Right.
You either have us refabricate the product,
Or move the
modify the
wall.
product,
Yeah.
or you can have Sparky or the drywaller or whomever fix what they didn't do right. But it's a way that you can now guarantee that the product is sitting there and you can drive the other trades that within the industry because the mill worker is now on time.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's the pitch that I make. And they're like, oh, does this cost me anymore? Like, no, we're going to do this because the value on the back end for me is absolutely huge.
You know, one of the
Absolutely.
you've probably seen this, but one of the challenges we have in the trades is unprofessional trades.
Yes.
And it just is, right? Guys
Yeah.
that are really good at their trade, but maybe not great at communicating or
Yes.
communicating inside their company.
Yes.
So when you're a great communicator, when you say these are the expectations, these are how we're going to do it, I would imagine they're both a little bit impressed by you and a little bit scared at the same time. They're like, oh, this guy's serious.
Yeah.
But the most expensive building, as you know, is one that never gets built
Yeah.
or one that takes forever to build. So when you've
Yeah.
got certainty as
Yeah.
a purchaser or somebody who's trying to hit another time frame, a master time frame, I would opt for that all day long.
Yeah.
I'd buy
And,
that.
and, and and I'll take your thought and just take it one step further, is I would argue that customers, whether they're general contractors or builders or developers or whatever it is, the good ones want to be managed. And so if you have a customer that's fighting being managed, and and I'm talking about managed not in a bad way, not in a confrontational way, but terms of providing information, and it's a partnership that both of you need to land successfully when this thing is over. That includes profitability. Finding a client that wants to be managed is a good proxy for finding a good customer, I would argue. And there are 13,000 general contractors in this country. The pool is huge. If you don't like what you currently have as your customer, find somebody else.
Thank you
Um,
for saying that because I feel like a broken record saying it.
yeah.
Do people still talk about broken records? There's no more
Eh,
records anymore.
yeah. Maybe that's our gray hair, my friend.
I can't even call it a skipping CD. That's old now too. I need a new analogy. Mark, this has been great. You've earned at least three, perhaps. We'll see. We'll see what the feedback is. I'll ask the
Fair
people.
enough.
Let data be
Yeah,
our guide. Maybe I'll put
yeah,
this in the
absolutely.
contractor strategy group, and we'll see what we get back for as a heat map. But that being said, thank you for your time. I know you're busy. You've got lots of other things. But before I let you go, how the heck do we find you if somebody's got questions or comments for you?
Yeah. Yeah, so I appreciate that. I do want to do just a little bit of a summary and make sure that we kind of put a
Yep.
bow on this whole thing.
Sure. Sure.
That takes away from my time for the contact. I'm absolutely comfortable with that because the education is stellar, and that's the most important piece. Think about the concept we talked about in popping that balloon. And this concept is that lumpy schedule, that erratic workflow of all these other inputs that control our life, our clients grabbing our schedule and managing, being our production scheduler, if you will. And so
Mm.
how do we solve that? Think about it as a balloon, and you have to have multiple fingers poking at that balloon. Number one, you have to address the front end in terms of contract and communication. I don't care which way you do it if you have a PO, but you have to set the expectations up very clearly up front. That alone won't do it. Number two, you have to be thinking about how you release work to the shop floor in that one piece flow format. If you're doing it in terms of batches, you're going to get lumpy work in your shop. And with lumpy work comes problems to get throughput. We can talk about lean if we want in terms of one piece flow, but that whole concept of one piece flow is uber important. Make it the right size to get it through your shop floor and maximize your throughput. You got to maximize throughput, not equipment usage. There's a true difference between the two. Number three, you have to be thinking about the bottleneck. The bottleneck is that third finger poking at the balloon because they're constantly shifting. Clients not getting information back, but you still need to produce this month. That is a
Mhm.
huge constraint to making sure that you get the revenue for you to get past your break even and become profitable. And so bottleneck management and bottleneck thinking, that theory of constraints, if you've read the book, The Goal, that whole concept, you and I could have a whole conversation
Just
just
on the
about
goal.
bottlenecks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love The Goal. I love that book. It is applicable to our industry. And the final one is how do we end up taking the other trades and these inputs out of the equation and it's pre-build and store? So
Mm.
think about those four fingers popping at the balloon. There are more. Um, I'm not trying to seed you again with a follow-on if this is if your clients are looking for it, but please think about that balloon and constantly be thinking about multiple independent ways to attack the problem. So with that, to your question, how am I reached?
Yeah. How do we find you? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the best way, LinkedIn is a great example. So if you look for Marc Sanderson at Wilkie Sanderson or at Innergy, you'll find me. Feel free. One of my staff members is constantly monitoring that. So I'm not promising a 24-hour turn in terms of communication, but we'll get connected. That's a great way. Another way is just go to www.innergy.com.
Mm.
And if one of the things that we do that would be further education, do the / events. Go look at all the events that we do. From an energy standpoint, one, they're free.
Yeah.
They're all woodworking based. And last year we did 106. And we do regional events all the time. And just come and join us. It's not a commercial, I promise. It is truly about these concepts that we've been talking about today. So
Yeah.
those would be the two ways I'd say suggest reaching me.
I've heard good things about the events.
Good.
I'll have to say. People might not know how to spell energy, by the way.
Yeah. Innergy.
Yeah. Interesting name. It's hard now to
Yeah,
get good short domains.
it is. It
Yeah.
is.
Energy is
It was
pretty good.
a combination of that kind of that 1 + 1 equaling something, innovation plus energy. And
Oh,
which
that's how you got it.
yeah,
Okay.
that's how we got there. Which
Okay.
is, we really do take seriously running through problems. And how do we solve industry chronic problems? So again, that's it is
Yeah.
yeah,
So let me say this without saying anything commercial, as you will.
yeah. I don't want to do that.
I have three clients, three one-on-one coaching clients that work with me, just
Yeah.
specifically with me, not the rest of the coaches in my team. Three clients that are in the process of installing Energy right now.
Mm. Well, I am
Well,
blessed.
sorry, that look on your face was that's not enough. No, the
Well,
reason sorry. But the reason is because that next level conversation, like Dom, we're at I won't give away numbers, right? But we're at X. We need to get to Y. I can see the hill ahead of me, but I can't see over it. And
yeah,
clean data,
yes,
consistency, predictability, just the
yeah,
stress and the strain on their lives. Like I just want something that centralizes the data so that I can make the right decisions. That's generally how I find people getting there.
yeah. I'll just say this, the concept of the bottleneck report,
Mm.
it is the heartbeat of the software. Having all
Oh,
the data that if people just enter the data, which there are, you know, that your staff is managing the information anyway. It might be on a piece of paper, it may be in an Excel spreadsheet, it's getting managed. The issue is aggregating it together. And so yeah. Well, I'm excited that you have three, and I appreciate that immensely.
I don't know. Your
So,
face was maybe we should never play poker. I was like, oh,
oh my
is that
gosh.
enough?
Oh, I am so
Yeah.
transparent.
No, no. And again, it's not I'm not doing a commercial. I'm just saying that I'm seeing people doing it. And I understand the source reasons because I'm with them as they're making these decisions, and then making it come to life is another thing. And then the output, right? So when we talk about this, you're in there and you're already doing it at another shop, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've taken all the hard work over the last 26 years, and tried to condense it down to make it easier for the next people.
Yeah.
And so and we do have raving fans, which I love. And I'm blessed, honestly, Dominic. I'm
You know
blessed.
what? This mark, like this industry of cabinetry, millwork, closets, is I have raving fans too. I couldn't be prouder. I might be the luckiest guy in the entire world. Honestly, it's just so good.
Well, we might fight.
Everybody's nice. What's that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
We might fight over that one, sir.
Yeah. Well, listen, so far, and I'm going to ask people there's a Facebook group where we all hang out. It's called
Yeah.
Contractor Strategy Group. So I'm going to ask in there. So far, the three potential future topics are this blue ocean versus red ocean. You
Yeah.
mentioned that one.
Yes, sir.
How do I move to 4x10s with Flex on Friday? I think that a
Yes.
lot of people would be interested in that, also for themselves, right?
Yeah.
And then vendor managed inventory. How do I move
Oh,
towards vendor managed inventory and the financial implications of that on growth?
yeah. I'll add a couple more on just if you're interested.
Oh, well, I mean,
I,
Jonah's
I
never
have a
coming
whole
back now.
I have a whole webinar series just on client selection. And so what makes the right client? And it's not the easiest email, or the person that drives up to your door. If you're on the residential side, that may not be the perfect client. And so we could have a whole conversation about client selection and what that will do to your profitability at the end of the day. And one of and this would be just a fun piece. I always play the 100 project game. Take
Mm.
your last 100 projects, lop off the bottom 10%, and look at what happens to your profitability. And I will guarantee that it moves up. And if that's the case, look at what the theme is of the bottom 10, figure that out, and filter that out in the next 12 months. And then do it again and again and again. And that's exactly what Wilkie has been doing over the last, I would say, 12, 15 years.
You're
Is
curating your client base.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the industry is large enough to do that. And when you do that, you find a perfect fit, and you find, I would argue, maximum profitability towards that end.
Yeah. Oh boy.
All right.
Yeah. I might just
So
give you the podcast. You can host it.
you're so funny.
Not going to happen. All right. Mark, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you,
Appreciate your
sir.
wisdom. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. I love
Bye
it.
bye.
This is a joy, absolute joy.
Thanks, Mark. Well, well, well. What did you learn from Mark about those 4 inflection points? I mean, wow. Mark, once again, thank you for being a guest on the show. That was excellent. I really enjoy the input that you gave us. And you know what's interesting is I'm going to reference another professional in our industry, Brad Carlisle from Quantum Lean. Of the 4 inflection points, the things that we can change to fix our scheduling issues, Brad spoke about 3 of them, which makes sense because Brad deals mostly in the shop side, and you and I, Mark, deal in the front of the house as the shop side. And so the contract red lines is something that Brad didn't bring up when I talked to him about the very same thing. Some of you probably saw that I posted on Instagram. Brad and I went out for breakfast, and I asked him the question right there in a pretty noisy diner, what his thoughts were about scheduling issues, because it just keeps coming up. All of us have these scheduling issues, and if that's a consistent problem that I keep hearing about, of course, I'm always going to be trying to find solutions and bring you that information. So I really appreciate the fact that both yourself and Brad came up with the same series of answers, slightly different viewpoints into the business, but really the same outcomes. So, folks, as you're listening to this, these are, when I talk about proven systems, simple systems, it's easy to overcomplicate business. That I could do that all day long, and you're probably good at it too. The really hard part is simplifying it, figuring out the top priority and then chasing that priority until it's done and dusted. And so, Marc, again, thank you for being on the show to talk about that. So, folks, from what you learned today, what are you going to put in place? You know, that you listen to the show, that's great. Entertainment, for sure. But this is a business coaching show. You can come here for entertainment, but let's then just call it entertainment. But if you're coming here for education, if you're coming here for knowledge, if you're coming here for that confidence I was talking about, remember, shoulders back, chin up, take a breath. If that's the feeling you're looking for, then what I need you to do next is take an action. Marc laid out a bunch of great actions. I've laid out as many as I can that are relevant to the topic today. Take action on something. Momentum is what you need. And then keep that momentum going. Hey, speaking of momentum, I got a really nice text message. You know, I tell people all the time, hey, send me a message, 315-903-7853. Just say, Dom, let's talk. So I did. I spoke to a guy named Wally in Minnesota, and then he was asking for some downloads. And I think the one I sent him was on profitability. So anyways, he sends this text message back. Hey there, just wanted to shoot you a quick thank you for the free download. Finally helped me nail down my estimates and actually see some profit. You're a lifesaver. Appreciate all the tips. Keep them coming. Got to run. Time to check the ice fishing holes. Skull. So there you go. He had to throw in a fishing reference because I'm at my desk. But Wally, he's going fishing. That's fantastic. Thanks, Wally, for reaching out. I appreciate it. I really love seeing the messages from you guys. That is fantastic. Hey, earlier in the episode, I mentioned the business operations audit. It's a way to dip your toe in the water and get a full perspective and overview on what to do next. Look, it's a new program, but it's certainly not new information. And myself and all of my coaches have been fully trained on delivering this. It's punchy. It's a 4-part assessment. And what it does, it takes you through a SWOT analysis. SWOT is, by the way, it's another fancy word. Here, today you learned another fancy word. SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Imagine if you could look at your business through those 4 googly eyes: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Anyways, it's a 4-part assessment. Takes you through a SWOT analysis of your business, another assessment that helps you prioritize and then top grade your problems and your opportunities, and then another thing, which is a 5-year financial forecast. So what does your business look like today? And based on the changes you can make or you want to make, what will that impact be over 5 years? That's all before we get to the debrief and action report. So it's pretty juicy. It's definitely punchy, and it's definitely packed with value. And if you want information on that, just shoot me a text. Just say, Dom, let's talk. Or you could say BOA, Business Operations, whatever you like. Just shoot me a message. You guys know the cell phone number already. Listen, I want to simplify and solve a common problem. And so today, Marc brought up 2 things. Obviously, the topic of today is solving scheduling issues. And so I created the Rodina scale. Thank you, Nick, for your questions on that. I just want to talk about that for a second, because if you haven't gotten it yet or you haven't decided to get it yet, I think you need to see this. So I'll tell you about the 1-page report. And then for those of you who are looking for some kind of software, and again, this is not an ad for Innergy. I'm just talking about software in general. Software is a leverage tool to help you do something that you're already doing repetitively, right? But there's a tool to help you make the right decision. Because I've been that guy who's gotten on a great demo. Remember our joke from earlier? I get on a great demo and I hear from a great salesperson. I'm like, yeah, that thing. And then I never use it. So because I wasn't actually solving the right business problem. Then I've got other software I can't live without. Calendly is an example. Like I use it every single day. So anyways, first let's talk about the Rodina scale. So what we've got here is a way to separate your company. You think about that. It's broken into 3 sections that go left to right across the page. So landscape view, right? It's just a 1-page report, folks. It's not a huge download. So there's 3 sections, left to right, boom, boom, and boom. The first one is who owns the job at what point of the business. Now, I've been in the cabinetry trade and working with owners like yourself for many years. One of the things that we find again and again is that the problem with scheduling and moving jobs through the pipe is quite often nobody actually owns the job. And so there's nobody's responsible and nobody's there pushing or pulling the job through, right? So that happens sometimes. So the very first row is who owns the job? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it the project manager? Do you have a project manager? Why would you need a project manager? Is it the foreman? Is it whoever's in charge of install? And then is it the office? So there's some different phases that a job goes through, right? And then we talk about something called the WIP life cycle. For those of you who have never used that term before, WIP is an acronym, WIP. It stands for work in progress. So what's your work in progress life cycle? There's actually quite a bit of accounting that goes along with WIP. And I have got Kathy Svetina joining me on the podcast very shortly to talk about WIP accounting. So stay tuned if you're interested in that. I want to make a joke about accounting being boring, but Kathy's actually a really great guest. I've already recorded it. We're just waiting for it to go live. Anyways, in the WIP life cycle, we could see who in our company is responsible for a job at any given point in time. So you or I, as the owner or project owner, know where to go and push, pull, cajole, remove bottlenecks for people, right? And then the third part is what Mark talked about today and what Brad Carlisle talked to me about over breakfast a couple of weeks ago. What are the solution levers? And there were 4 that Mark pointed out, 4 of them that we need to know of, right? The first one is contract red lines, right? Now, go back and listen to the episode with Kian Murphy, who talked about how to redline contracts. That's here. It's in this series. You'll be able to find it, right? Number 1 is contract red lines. Number 2 is to pre-build and store your work. Number 3 is one-piece flow, which is a lean manufacturing concept. And number 4, which is just brilliant, is shifting bottlenecks. That's actually playing with the calendar and time and priorities, but running this business on purpose. Look, running a cabinet shop, as you guys know, running a millwork shop, making closets is insanely profitable when we get it right. And having tools like this helps you train your team to get it right more often than not. So anyways, if you want this one, excuse me, sorry, folks, I coughed there. If you want this one, the full title is I'm going to say this boring, the Scheduling Issues Solution Finder. But the more casual topic is the Rodina scale. And that's in honor of our good friend, Nick Alberta from Rodina Cabinets. So Nick, I named that one after you, buddy. Okay. The second thing I've got for you is, and this is another professional development tool. By the way, we used to call them free downloads. We're not calling them that anymore. They're not free downloads. Free downloads are gone. What we have here is professional development tools. Remember, I rebranded the top level of the company to Contractor Wealth System. And the reason I did that is because cabinet make a profit system is one thing. Profit Tool Belt, the other podcast, is another thing. But what binds all those together? Because then you've got the book, Construction Millionaire Secrets. You've got the Facebook group, Contractor Strategy Group. You've got courses that we're going to continue to run. I've got more courses I'm rolling out. There's a lot going on here at our company. And so I need an umbrella concept to tie it all together. And that's Contractor Wealth Systems. So that's why I say that. So if you're in a situation where you're trying to grow and you need a software to help you, I'm not sure where this software is needed in your company. It doesn't matter where. But having a system to go through the software, to be logical, not emotional about it, is how you make the right decision. And so the professional development tool we have is called How Do We Choose the Right Software or App for Our Company? Software Requirements Workbook. Okay. Now I call it a workbook. It's 7 pages, but you could sit down and do it. Let's say it's something you want in finance and your bookkeeper's asking for it. Well, you could just say to your bookkeeper, go and fill this out and then come back to me and let's have a meeting. You don't have to do all the work. You're the owner. Right. But now you've got a tool to give to the bookkeeper, or let's say the foreman has a tool they want to use, right? They want to start using some sort of on-site photo app. Okay, that's fine. That's an easy decision, but what's the business impact going to be? Do we need this? Is it the right thing? Maybe you haven't implemented time tracking in the business yet. What the heck? Maybe you haven't. Go and look at this. So this workbook is something for you to sit down with and work through. I really like workbook style things because I can't imagine every answer to every situation for every company. But through the workbook, it's not me telling you what to do. It's me and my team putting coaching questions on the table to help you sort it out yourself. And then the answer, hopefully, blah, 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 floats to the top. That's what we're looking for here. So anyways, there's a whole bunch of question and answer boxes that's going to walk you through it. And again, this specific tool for software or apps is to be used so that you can remove emotion and rely on logic to make a critical decision. Once you're relying on logic to run the business, then you've got simple systems. You really have simple systems. And the simpler you make your systems, the smoother the business runs. If it always runs on emotion, it tends to run on chaos, right? Being very reactive. If you find yourself chaotic, if you find yourself reactive, if you're just going whatever way the wind blows, that's when especially me, I feel at my worst, like out of control. But when things are running along tickety boo, that's when things are running along tickety boo. So, anyways, this professional development tool should help. If you want that one, what's the code word for that? Just say software in your text message, and I'll say it one more time. The cell number to reach me on is 315-903-7853. I just say software. And then you know what I'll do? I'll send you back the document called software. That's the simple system we operate with here. All right, listen, folks, I am very proud to do what I do. You do not understand how much I love this. I cannot wait for the day when you and I can sit down, cup of coffee, glass of wine, across the table, and just talk like real humans. Until then, the podcast is going to have to do. I'm sure I'll be seeing you at speaking events throughout the year at different places. Actually traveling a lot for my son's lacrosse this year as well. And I'll let you know on Contractor Strategy Group which cities I'm dropping down into. If we have a chance to have that coffee or beer, or no, I don't like beer, coffee or wine, then we'll do that. All right. Have a great day. I really appreciate you checking in. Marc Sanderson, thank you very much for your insights. Brad Carlisle, you got an honorable mention. Thank you for your insights. Nick, as always, big guy, you're doing great things out there. You inspired a new professional development tool. How does that feel? Go tell the kids. All right, folks, we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.